While animation made for adults is now as popular as ever, the stigma against it might almost be worse than it was 50 to 60 years ago. Sure, there's more of them being broadcast on television and Netflix, but not counting series that have yet to premiere, the United States has only one ongoing adult animated television show that isn't some kind of comedy. To put that into perspective, ever since 1990, there has been a total of 135 adult animated titles. Of those, 93% were comedies, and 62% of those comedies were specifically sitcoms. This means that only 9 were not able to be labeled as some form or variation of comedy. But how did we get this way? Surely, I hear you say, there must have been some kind of influence to cause such a trend. And you're right. Wonder why the cutoff date for the statistics was set to 1990? Well, before then, only 2 eligible shows had ever aired. 1972's Wait Till Your Father Gets Home by Hanna-Barbera, and The Simpsons in 1989. Yes, The Simpsons can be attributed to opening the floodgates of adult animation on TV, breaking the social stigma of cartoons are for children. A move that was very much a double-edged sword, and to truly understand why, we're going to have to look at the reason there was a stigma in the first place, all the way back to the roots of animation, the Golden Age. Back then, shorts were not meant only for adults or children, but general audiences. Thus, they could get away with much more and were respected as a form of escapism. While Disney shorts tended to be fairly lighthearted in nature, Warner Brothers often satirized aspects of American society and had much more violence and slapstick.
I came here for gold, and I'm gonna get it.
This golden era of animation would come to an end with the US's entrance into World War II, when studios and their cartoon divisions were encouraged to produce pro-war PSAs by the United States. This propaganda ended up using the majority of their animation's resources, hindering their ability to regularly produce theatrical shorts.
Nice going, eh, Adolf?
After the war had ended, things only got worse. In 1946, the American Union was able to negotiate a pay increase of 25%, making the already hefty production costs more expensive.
You'll be sorry!
2 years after that, the verdict was decided for the US versus Paramount Pictures case, also known as the Hollywood antitrust case. This changed Hollywood as a whole, as it prevented studios from guaranteeing their own films' bookings at theaters. So now, theatrical shorts were not only more expensive to produce, they also had less resources to use and were not guaranteed any bookings at any theaters. It was too risky. And to top it all off, once World War II had ended, the era of television began. While in 1947 only a few thousand American families owned television sets, by 1955 half of all American households did. Television was a fun, new experience for families because of how much more social it was compared to the movie theater. It was a unifying experience. As television continued rapidly increasing in popularity, the animation industry was forced to adapt. And adapt it did. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, known for creating Tom and Jerry, the Flintstones, and many, many, many more, were able to pioneer animation for television by lowering production costs enough to make a profit. They achieved this by using an abstract, limited art style that allowed them to create effects similar to previous works while still using fewer drawings. This style had originally been developed by UPA and was used in the short film Gerald McBoing Boing.
He doesn't talk words, he goes boing boing instead.
In animation, voice actors were cheaper to hire compared to live-action titles, as they could reuse them in the same episode with relative ease. Sure, the animation still cost quite a bit more than live action, but networks were able to gain a profit from it anyways by rerunning the programming frequently. To be less risky, the cartoons were made to be very child-friendly, and in the mid-1960s, networks began broadcasting all of them on Saturday mornings to appeal to advertisers. This concentration of their child audience is where the term Saturday morning cartoons originates from, and also how the social stigma against the medium was popularized.
You know, for kids!
Now finally, we bring this back to The Simpsons, and how animation for adults got into such a dilemma. A recurring theme throughout animation's transition to television is that it had to be essentially neutered to be less risky for networks to produce. That's what it boils down to. Less risk. Now consider the fact that the boom of adult animation only came after The Simpsons was a massive success. Once networks saw the concept of a more mature animated comedy could work, they were willing to invest into similar shows due to it being a tried and true formula. Think about it. How many shows have you seen on Adult Swim or Fox that fall into the trope of being very limited in actual animation, relying on raunchy humor to carry it through? Sure, older Simpsons has a very charming, messy look, but even it tends to fall into this same trap in the latest of seasons. And that is what we mean when saying that adult animation is in a dilemma. It's not really dying per se, it's simply too safe, and there's very little room for experimentation.
I didn't progress.
The saddest part about this is that there's no nearsighted solution to this very admittedly first world problem. Unless a network takes a risk and greenlights a very influential, mature, non-comedy television show, which is unlikely considering just how expensive it would be, who knows how long this will go on. If you're finding this video through me, be sure to hit Bedhead Bernie up with a sub. He is criminally underrated. But if you're seeing this because of Bernie, it'd mean a lot if you were to check out my content as well. I've actually just done a review of an old Martin Luther King animated movie about time travel, which I think just might be up your guys' alley.